thee. Let the doors be open, qu'on ouvre les portes. And we move into statements by members. Déclaration de député. The honourable member for Fredericton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In honor of Earth Day, I attended an engaging installation of art by artisans in my riding. It challenged me to think of one word that would guide me to face the magnitude of the climate crisis. My word is tenacity. We all need to find the courage and determination to keep pushing forward, and I find that inspiration from our youth. Young people are growing up acutely aware of the immense challenge our planet faces, and that the lives of every living thing are at stake if we fail to act. We are all complicit in the continued ecocide as long as governments across the globe fail to step up and make the profound changes required to address the disaster that is already taking place. I know my colleagues in this House are working hard towards solutions. Every day I am inspired by young Canadians from coast to coast to coast, and I join my voice to theirs to advocate for bolder and immediate actions to defend our present and protect our future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Tobique-Mactaquac.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canada is blessed with an abundance of natural resources that should be responsibly and sustainably utilized. Now is the time to invest in strengthening our energy, resource, agricultural, technology, and manufacturing sectors, which will assist in returning Canada to prosperity and help lower the cost of living across the country.
Hear, hear.
We can also be a stable supplier of safe, clean, ethical, and reliable energy, food, and resources to countries that are desperately searching for safe alternatives at this time, displacing dictatorial and authoritarian suppliers with democratic ones. After all, energy security and food security is national security and international security. The world wants more Canadian goods, food, and energy. Canada wants more Canadian goods, food, and energy. What we lack is a government with a vision to get Canadian goods, food, and energy to market. On this side of the House, we are committed to advocating for increased Canadian self-reliance. Canada must take necessary actions now to bolster our energy, food, and resource development. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Hear, hear, hear. The honourable member for Bonavista, Buren, Trinity.
Mr. Speaker, April is Parkinson's Awareness Month. Here in Canada, more than 100,000 people live with this condition, and this number is on the rise globally, with Canada's experiencing among the highest prevalence rates. While most people living with this condition are older than 60, individuals 50 or younger can develop early onset Parkinson's. As well, it also takes some individuals many years to be diagnosed. Since there is no diagnostic test, and it can mimic other conditions. In Canada, more than 30 people are diagnosed with Parkinson's every day, and we expect to reach 50 new diagnoses per day within the decade. Parkinson's Canada is a fantastic advocate for all Canadians living with Parkinson's, and they also provide many useful resources to help improve the quality of life for those who live with this diagnosis. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to acknowledge Parkinson's Canada's amazing work this month and all year long, and every person in Canada who so bravely lives with this condition, and to let them know our government will continue to be partners with you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Hear, hear. L'honorable député de La Prairie.
The honourable member for La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, last Saturday in Saint-Constant, François Buttle had a commotion in his neighbourhood. He ran out into the street to see that a car had rolled over and caught fire. He quickly realised that the driver was still inside. Despite an initial blast that pushed the police away, Buttle went into the vehicle to untie the driver and pull him out. Whilst an officer held the door open for him, Mr. Speaker, in the heat of the moment, François Buttle did not hesitate for a second to help others. He probably saved a life at the risk of his own. He later declared that he was just a citizen doing his job. No, François, you were not just a citizen doing his job. I knew of you, amongst other things, your big heart, your constant smile, and your hard work. But this event allowed me to see that you also had in you the exceptional courage, the character that characterizes heroes, because that is what you are, François, a hero. The young driver's life was saved thanks to François Buttle and two courageous policemen. I would like to say to them, bravo and thank you. The Honourable Member for Hochelaga. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In this week of volunteerism, I wanted to highlight the extraordinary dedication of 3 volunteers in my riding of Hochelaga. Georgette Constantino celebrated her 95th birthday last week. She has been a volunteer for 40 years at the Saint-Jean-Baptiste de la Salle Church Bazaar. Thanks to her work, hundreds of households have found thousands of useful goods at low prices. Pierre Marcouillet has been involved with the Hochelaga Community Centre for over 50 years. For more than 10 years, he has organised a tax clinic for 1,000 to 1,500 tax declarations every year. Michel Vallée works every month in distributing food at the food bank, fetching donations and distributing them. Mr. Speaker, these are amazing examples in amongst many others who work selflessly to improve the quality of the lives and families in my riding. Thank you to them, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Perth Wellington.
Mr. Speaker, this week is National Volunteer Week, a chance to thank and pay tribute to the countless volunteers who are truly the lifeblood of our communities. Volunteers like Colleen Johnson of Mitchell, who was recently named Citizen of the Year for her selfless work in support of others, including her efforts to support 3-year-old Claire and her family as Claire battles cancer. Volunteers like Ron Ellis of Drayton, who helped to establish the Drayton Festival Theatre in 1991 and has been a tireless volunteer ever since. Volunteers like Elizabeth Johnston and Amanda Broadhagen, who are leading the way as women leaders in agriculture. Volunteers like Gary West and Murray Schlotzauer of Perth East, who have been involved with so many agricultural organizations that it's impossible to list them all. Finally, Mr. Speaker, our rural communities owe a debt of gratitude to each and every volunteer firefighter and their families who are on call each and every day. To all who give up their time for others, I say thank you.
Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Scarborough North.
Mr. Speaker, April is Sikh Heritage Month, when we recognize the significant contributions of Canadians of Sikh faith to the growth and prosperity of Canada. My riding of Scarborough North is home to a thriving Sikh community and East Toronto's only Gurdwara, known as Gursikh Sabha Canada. In the depths of the COVID-19 pandemic, Gursikh Sabha Canada organized volunteers and resources to help support those in need. In addition to raising $75,000 for North York General Hospital to purchase much needed medical equipment, they spearheaded local initiatives, including vaccine clinics, food distribution, and a holiday toy drive. I would like to commend President Gobinder Randhawa and members of the congregation for their tireless work to make a positive difference in the lives of others. Le mois du patrimoine Sikh arrive à son...
This month is coming to an end, but let's continue to preserve the values of Sikhism, and which is quality, compassion, and service. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Etobicoke North.
It's National Volunteer Week, and I celebrate the compassion, empathy, and generosity of volunteers in Etobicoke North. They are the lifeblood of our community. They give their time, energy, and experience to improve the lives of others. Through the pandemic, community leaders, families, and friends were there for one another, lifted each other up. Rexdale Community Health Centre volunteers gave 19,000 hours of service last year. Church volunteers delivered food supplies, provided support, and organized calls to combat loneliness. Volunteers with the International Muslims Organization delivered food and COVID aid. The Sixth Spiritual Centre Toronto provided seva and packed meals, and BAPS 3 Swaminarayan Mandir provided food, pandemic support, and prayers. I thank all our tremendous volunteers for helping to change lives, better our community through service, and to help build a better future for everyone.
Bravo. The Honourable Member for Sherwood Park for Saskatchewan.
Mr. Speaker, as the grandson of a Holocaust survivor, I appreciate the opportunity to mark the 107th anniversary of the Armenian Genocide in the House of Commons. The Armenian Genocide was the first genocide of the 20th century, in which well over 1 million Armenian Christians and members of other communities in the Ottoman Empire were systematically and brutally killed. This genocide was barely recognized for decades, and it continues to be denied today, most notably by the Turkish state. Genocide denial matters. Denial of past genocide enables future criminals who hope their crimes will be ignored as well. When he was planning the Holocaust, Hitler said in 1939, "Who, after all, speaks today of the annihilation of the Armenians?" Those who deny historical genocides aren't just debating history. They are paving the way for current and future crimes. Crimes against the Armenian people continue today from those who deny the right of self-determination and the importance of resolving disputes peacefully. What happened to Armenians 107 years ago impacted the life of my grandmother, a German Jewish girl who hadn't been born yet. And the continuing denial of genocide affects the safety and security of all of us and of generations to come. So to honor the survivors and for our own safety's sake, we remember.
The honourable member for Vaughan Woodbridge.
Mr. Speaker, Muslims in Canada and around the world are 5 days away from the culmination of the sacred month of Ramadan. From sunrise to sunset, Muslims across Canada have been fasting, praying, and practicing self-restraint. Mr. Speaker, like many of my colleagues, I've enjoyed breaking bread at sunset with my Muslim brothers and sisters across my riding of Vaughan Woodbridge and here in Ottawa. And for the first time in 2 years, last night, parliamentarians gathered with Ahmadiyya Muslims and friends to break fast on the Hill. This uplifting iftar dinner celebrated the values we all share while reiterating our commitment to rejecting Islamophobia and fighting discrimination in all its forms. Muslims call this service, their generosity and compassion is cherished by Vaughan residents. As Ramadan comes to an end, I'm looking forward to hosting my annual Eid dinner with Muslim leaders and community members from across the city of Vaughan this May 5th. Ramadan Mubarak to everyone celebrating. May this Ramadan and Eid festival be filled with many blessings and much joy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I also just want to remind folks to keep their volume down a little bit so that we can hear these great statements by members. The honourable member,
The honourable member for Charlesbourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, in May 2020, we were at the beginning of the pandemic and we became aware of the tsunami that was hitting us. We all collectively understood that many of our citizens' lives were in the hands of our health angels. It was at that moment that I, as an MP, wanted to support them and highlight the importance of their presence. I decided to join the Together We Stand, a Nous Vaincrons Ensemble movement that was born in New England. In order to show my support for frontline workers, I went to distribute to many of these workers who are ambulance attendants, orderlies, and nurses the flag on which is inscribed the Quebec version of the slogan, Nous Vaincrons Ensemble. Even today, 2 years later, I travel around my riding and I see that the flags are still standing proudly. Today, in the House of Commons, I would like to reiterate my support and tip my hat to all healthcare professionals for their efforts to win this battle. And I'm highlighting National Nursing Week from the 9th to the 15th of May with the hashtag Together We Stand and recognise the important role of nurses in our society. Thank you.
The honourable member for Sturgeon River Parkland.
Mr. Speaker, for over 100 years, the bells of St. Jean-Baptiste Church in Morinville, Alberta could be heard from miles around. The church was a place of worship, a place to mourn, and a place to celebrate for generations of Catholic, Indigenous, Métis, and Franco-Albertans. On June 30th of last year, in a disturbing act of hatred, this iconic structure was burned to the ground, and for the first time in over 100 years, the bells were silenced. Despite this devastating blow to our community, the parishioners of St. Jean-Baptiste have shown our country what the love of Jesus Christ really means, to love your enemies and to pray for those who persecute you. On May 14th, the church is hosting a fundraiser at the Morinville Community Cultural Centre to rebuild our beloved St. Jean-Baptiste. Today in Canada's Parliament, I declare that we will not be defined by this act of hatred. The bells of St. Jean-Baptiste shall ring again.
L'honorable député de Mont-Royal.
The honourable member from Mont-Royal.
Speaker, Vladimir Kara-Murza has emerged as one of Russia's most respected democratic opposition leaders, a noted public intellectual and a voice of conscience. He is also a senior fellow at the Raoul Wallenberg Centre for Human Rights in my riding, and is no stranger to many of us in this Canadian Parliament. He has testified before us and was instrumental in our unanimous adoption of Magnitsky legislation. Vladimir represents the very best of what Russians stand for and the country that Russia can aspire to be. Targeted for his principal leadership, Vladimir has survived 2 assassination attempts and nonetheless had the courage to return to Russia to oppose Putin's autocratic regime and his war of aggression and atrocities in Ukraine. For this, he has now been unjustly imprisoned and faces trumped-up criminal charges that can result in decades of imprisonment. Mr. Speaker, I know I speak for all members of this House when I express my condemnation of this injustice and call for Vladimir Kara-Murza's immediate release. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Winnipeg Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I rise today to recognize Early Childhood Educators Week and honor the thousands of ECEs from coast to coast. Every day, ECEs perform some of the most crucial work in our communities. We all know that the first few years of a child's development are the most important, and ECEs help to ensure that our little ones get the best possible start in life. But ECEs, 98% who are women, are not compensated fairly for their labor. In fact, a quarter of them work second jobs to supplement their low incomes. Years ago, I worked as an ECE. I loved the job, but the low pay and lack of benefits resulted in me leaving this noble profession. As $10 a day childcare is implemented across Canada, we must make raising ECE wages and providing them with good benefits, including pensions, a priority. This week, let's do more than just thank ECEs. Let's ensure they're paid fairly for the work that they do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, on the 24th of April, we mark the 107th anniversary of the genocide of the Armenian people. Let us together honour the memory of the 1.5 million Armenians whose lives were cut short beginning in April 1915, as well as all those who suffered exile, famine and grief. On behalf of the Bloc Québécois, I wish to reiterate our solidarity with the Armenian people as the party that initiated the recognition of the genocide by the House of Commons. I would like to reiterate the friendship between the Quebec and Armenian nations. I would also like to take this opportunity to reflect on the seriousness of the actions taken. Mr. Speaker, genocides are still taking place in the world even as we speak. We do not have the right to trivialize them, especially we as parliamentarians do not have the right to be indifferent. Mr. Speaker, we are powerless in the face of the atrocities committed 107 years ago against the Armenians. Let us hope that the commemoration of this genocide will give us the courage to act today when we can.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Cypress Hills Grasslands.
Mr. Speaker, farmers have begun to plant their crops for the year in Western Canada once again. Western Canada was built on a hope and a prayer, and today it's no different with farming in Cypress Hills Grasslands. There's been below average moisture for multiple years, and I know farmers are already praying for timely rains once again this year. They also need the Prime Minister to quit punishing them with ridiculous policies based on false claims about their industry. First there was the carbon tax, then the clean fuel standard and harsh emissions reductions for fertilizer production. Uncertainty and sky-high input costs come from an out-of-touch Prime Minister. Now he wants to go after wheat growers as a supposedly high-emitting sector. Terrible. Arable farmland sequesters over 9.5 megatons of CO2 every single year in Saskatchewan alone. Enough is enough. Producers across this great country just want to be left doing what they do best. Produce food for a hungry world while taking care of the land and the communities that we all love. Thanks to this Prime Minister and his continued attacks on the West, it's becoming impossible to do either one. Here, here. Here.
The honourable member for Laval-Lazille. Mr. Speaker, I rise before you today to pay tribute to a dear friend and pillar of the Montreal community who recently passed away. Mr. François Lheureux was a highly respected lawyer and a well-known activist in our great nation of Quebec. François was a very caring husband to his loving wife, Marie Brouillet, and a devoted father to his sons, Philou and Marc, who were diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder.
As his inspiration, my friend François served as a tireless advocate for a more inclusive society, believing passionately in the principle of neurodiversity. His dedication led him to the implementation of a wonderful autism organization in Montreal, the Giant Step School and Resource Center, where he served on the board of directors for over 20 years, much of that as vice president. His tireless efforts will benefit generations of autistic Canadians and their family. Je tiens à présenter.
I would like to extend my deepest condolences to his family. A great man has left us.
Goodbye. Rest in peace, Francois. May your memories be eternal. Thank you, Mr.
Oral questions? Question orale, the Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Invoked the Emergency Measures Act on Canadians without justification, and now he's trying to hide it. His ministers admitted they won't be cooperating with the inquiry, and they'll be hiding behind cabinet confidence, of course. How many times have they used that one? We, SNC, Winnipeg Lab documents, the list goes on. Their dirty work is always too secret for anyone to watch. This inquiry will be nothing but an exercise in nasty liberal political spin and nothing about transparency or accountability. Isn't that the truth?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
When illegal blockades hurt workers and endangered public safety, police were clear that they needed tools not held by any federal, provincial, or territorial law. It was only after we got advice from law enforcement that we invoked the Emergencies Act. The Canadian Policing Association, Canadian and Ontario Associations of Chiefs of Police all agree this is how the legislation should be used for emergencies. We have now announced the independent inquiry to examine the circumstances that led to the declaration and the measures taken in response. And I know we all look forward to Justice Rouleau's excellent work.
Hear, hear. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Wedge, divide, and stigmatize. That's what this Prime Minister is about, and that's what this inquiry is going to be about. Another chance for him to call innocent people racist and misogynist and accuse them of all kinds of things that are factually not true. The purpose of this inquiry on the use of the Emergencies Act is for Canadians to see the reason why the government used it, not a chance for Liberals to insult and divide. Why is the Prime Minister so afraid to show Canadians what reasons he had or didn't have to use the Emergencies Act? What is he trying to hide?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, when our government invoked the Emergencies Act, we committed to Canadians that we would be upfront and transparent about it. We have kept that commitment, and the Commission, an independent public inquiry, is further evidence of that. As we've made clear, we will work directly with the Commission to ensure that they're able to complete their work because Canadians demand answers, and that's exactly what we're delivering them.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Well, in a shocking revelation yesterday, the Prime Minister admitted he didn't use a loophole to get away with his illegal holiday. He didn't give himself permission. We know from the Complaints Commissioner that there were some hurdles to the RCMP doing their work, but they were not insurmountable. Yesterday, the Prime Minister removed one of those hurdles. Conservatives have asked the RCMP to reopen their criminal investigation into his activities. My question for the Prime Minister is, will he cooperate with the RCMP? Will he meet with the RCMP?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
It's clear that the Conservative Party has run out of ideas and material when they choose to raise issues that were brought up by the Conservative leader 3 Conservative leaders ago. Right. Mr. Speaker, I know they want to distract from their current leadership race, but there are real issues facing Canadians, from rising cost of living to Putin's illegal war in Ukraine. Those are the issues that I'm focused on. While they focused on me, we continue to remain focused on Canadians.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
There is no statute of limitations on fraud charges, I will inform the Prime Minister. This is very serious, Mr. Speaker. This is a big deal. The Prime Minister of Canada has potentially committed criminal offenses.
Right.
We're talking about possible charges against the Prime Minister of this country. The Prime Minister has to know how serious this is. The Prime Minister has to know he is not above the law. So my question for the Prime Minister is, has he met with private criminal counsel regarding these potential charges?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Conservative politicians want to continue manufacturing distractions on matters that were dealt with years ago, instead of talking about the economy, talking about the environment, talking about things that Canadians care about. What's clear is they don't want to talk about making sure our economic recovery leaves no one behind. They don't want to talk about or even acknowledge the climate crisis. They definitely don't want to talk about making our communities safer by banning assault weapons. They want to talk about me. So while they stay focused on me, I'll stay focused on Canadians.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
In 2016, the Prime Minister of Canada broke 4 separate sections of the Ethics Act. In doing so, we found out just in the last week he may have broken criminal law. This Prime Minister likes to break the rules. We know that. It all started with that illegal holiday, but it's continued with his illegal activity and interference with the SNC-Lavalin trial, his illegal benefits from the We Foundation, just to mention a few. This is a Prime Minister who is always pushing the boundaries of ethical conduct and coming as close as he can to breaking the law. And he seems to get away with it. But maybe, Mr. Speaker, maybe not this time. Is the Prime Minister above the law?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
What the Conservative Party is making very clear is that they don't want to talk about investments in childcare. They don't want to talk about how to close the infrastructure gap between Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities. They don't want to talk about investments in green infrastructure. They don't want to talk about making sure that the wealthiest pay their fair share. And they definitely don't want to talk about protecting a woman's right to choose. Mr. Speaker, while they focus on personal attacks on me, we'll stay focused on the things that matter to Canadians.
Order. My Lord. My Lord. L'honorable député de Belleuil-Chambly.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister said he was shocked and indignant. And that's great to hear. CN and Air Canada are headquartered in Montreal, and people are shocked that no one there speaks French. Well, we should be shocked that each and every member doesn't speak French, because this is in Quebec. Here in this House, 221 elected officials voted to state that French is the language of the Quebec nation. That was voted on here recently. Will this Prime Minister impose a basic knowledge of French on people and organizations which are headquartered in Quebec? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, our 2 official languages are at the heart of our identity. All Canadians deserve to be served in the official language of their choice by federally regulated businesses, including CN. The lack of French leaders within CN is unacceptable. And we expect the leadership there to set an example. Under our modernization of the Official Languages Act, we are giving the Official Languages Commissioner the tools he needs to ensure that CN respects its official languages obligations. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Well, I think this Prime Minister's indignation is a bit selective. The CEO of Air Canada makes fun of French. A VP of CN spoke only English at the Official Languages Committee, even though both of them are of Francophone extraction originally. This is all very concerning. So how is this Prime Minister so shocked at a time when the Governor General and the Lieutenant General don't speak French? How can he tell everyone? Essentially, he's saying that for his government, French is nothing more than a frivolity. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the Governor General is the first Indigenous person in this role. She was born in northern Quebec in the 50s. At that time, French was not taught in that region. Leaders need to set an example, and the Governor General has been taking intensive French courses ever since her appointment. Ms. Simon is determined to learn French and recognizes that it is fundamentally important to know our two official languages in order to be able to represent all Canadians. By making learning French a priority, she is demonstrating the importance of protecting French throughout the country.
Burnaby South.
Yesterday, the Environmental Commissioner made it very clear that the government's plan to price or pricing pollution lets the biggest polluters off the hook while hurting Indigenous communities and small businesses. They also have no plan for workers impacted by the climate crisis, which should come as no surprise when you've got a plan where you take advice from big oil and gas instead of the climate scientists. So when will this Prime Minister understand that delay on climate action has the same outcomes of denial of the climate crisis?
Here. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
The Commissioner's report recognizes that putting a price on carbon pollution is critical to reducing Canada's emissions. The reports acknowledge that our price on pollution cuts emissions and fights climate change. We have strengthened our benchmark and standards, addressing many of the issues the Commissioner identified, and we will continue to hold provinces and territories' feet to the fire to meet these new targets. We will use these reports to keep delivering what Canadians expect: a healthy environment and a healthy economy.
The Deputy to Burnaby Sud.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby South. Not only does this government have the worst climate record in the G7, but according to the Environment Commissioner, the emissions reductions plan is just a fantasy. It's based on overly optimistic projections and non-existent policy. When will this government stop pretending that it's doing something about the climate crisis? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. I'd like to thank the Commissioner for his hard work and the latest report. The report shows how far we've come and how much is still left to do. After a decade of inaction under the former Conservative government, we have made remarkable progress, whether by building the future green economy, by ensuring that polluting will no longer be free throughout Canada, or by protecting unprecedented amount of our lands and waterways. We will do more to keep our air clean, create middle-class jobs, and in order to grow a solid economy.
Member for Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Prime Minister admitted he never gave himself permission to accept an extravagant vacation gift from a lobbyist valued at $215,000. What was unknown to the RCMP during the original investigation is now known. This morning I wrote to the RCMP Commissioner asking them to reopen their investigation into the Prime Minister committing fraud on the government. Will the Prime Minister cooperate in this RCMP investigation?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Canadians are watching the Conservative Party of Canada engage in an act of political theatre on a matter that was dealt with years ago. They will stop at nothing to distract from their support of the illegal blockades, and that cost our economy, that put people out of work, and that made people feel unsafe in their own communities. Let's talk about the real things that matter to Canadians, from the cost of living to Putin's illegal war in Ukraine. While they continue to focus on me, we will stay focused on the things that matter to Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I know the Prime Minister thinks that he's off the hook, but there's no statute of limitations here in Canada. He shockingly revealed yesterday that he did not give himself the authorization to accept the extravagant gift. There's now a cloud of suspicion hanging over the Prime Minister, and he's under a shadow of doubt when it comes to his own integrity and honesty. So when will the Prime Minister begin speaking to the RCMP about violating the Criminal Code, Section 121, 1C?
Yes. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, Conservative politicians want to continue to keep manufacturing distractions on matters that were dealt with years ago, instead of talking about the economy, the environment, or issues that Canadians care about. What's clear is they don't want to talk about making sure our economy leaves no one behind. They don't want to talk about or even acknowledge the climate crisis. They definitely don't want to talk about making our communities safer with a ban on assault weapons. They want to talk about me. So while they stay focused on me, I'll stay focused on delivering for Canadians.
The honourable member for Brantford-Brant.
Mr. Speaker, Section 19 of the Criminal Code says that ignorance of the law by a person who commits an offence, which includes our Prime Minister, is not an excuse for committing an offence. Section 121 of the Code indicates that everyone is guilty of fraud in the government if they, being the officer, accept from anyone who has dealings with the government a reward, such as a luxury illegal vacation, unless they have consent in writing from the head of the department. If the Prime Minister did not give himself consent, will he admit that he's guilty of fraud?
Hear, hear. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, as I said, we're seeing the Conservatives don't want to focus on the things that matter to Canadians. They don't want to talk about workers. They don't want to talk about supporting seniors. They don't want to talk about supporting students. They don't want to talk about supporting veterans. They don't want to talk about the opioid crisis. They don't want to talk about reconciliation. They don't want to talk about investments in clean and renewable energy. They just continue to want to try and make personal attacks and focus on me while we as a government continue to remain resolutely focused on serving Canadians and delivering for them.
The honourable member for Brantford-Brant.
Mr. Speaker, we want to focus on his illegal, unethical acts. Our Prime Minister is the first and only Prime Minister found guilty by the Ethics Commissioner. The lavish, luxurious, illegal trip to the Bahamas was strike number one. Strike number two, our Prime Minister was again found guilty of ethical violations for his political interference in the SNC-Lavalin prosecution. This was followed by the WE scandal, Winnipeg Lab scandal, and now the Emergencies Act invocation. Yesterday, his admission that he did not give himself consent to accept the trip was strike number three. Out at that, game over. Why does the PM continue to conduct himself?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Ago, in this House, we presented a budget that moved forward on supporting Canadians, whether it by historic investments in housing, there to invest in green growth and good jobs, there to move forward on reconciliation. And one would think that the House of Commons would talk about these things that matter to Canadians or challenge the government on the things that we did in this budget. We all know the Conservatives look forward to challenging and disagreeing with this government on a range of things. Any questions about the budget? No. Any questions on about housing? No. The Conservatives just want to fling mud, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Selkirk Interlake Eastman.
I know the Prime Minister is very uncomfortable with this line of questioning, Mr. Speaker, and he's going to try to spin. But Canadians deserve to know that the Prime Minister is not above the law and, in fact, should be held to a higher standard. Yesterday, he admitted that he did not have consent to accept the vacation and took it anyway. The unknown is now known. So will the Prime Minister come clean, remove the cloud of suspicion, and proactively speak to the RCMP about his unethical and criminal behavior?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
As I pointed out, Mr. Speaker, these are issues that were brought up by the Conservative leader 3 Conservative leaders ago. The issue was aired, the issue was dealt with. What we see today is a Conservative Party desperate to distract Canadians from their farcical leadership race, distract Canadians from the important work we're doing on the budget, distract Canadians from the fact that they were busy supporting a convoy that shut down jobs and hurt Canadians across the country. These are things they don't want to talk about. What they want to do is focus on me with personal attacks. Mr. Speaker, we'll stay focused on Canadians.
Member for Selkirk Interlake Eastman.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'll tell the Prime Minister the one thing Canadians are sick and tired of is a Prime Minister who acts with impunity and thinks he's above the law. In the House yesterday, the Prime Minister gave the RCMP the missing clue they need to begin a formal investigation into defrauding the government of over $200,000. years. He did not grant himself the permission to take this trip. So will the Prime Minister face the consequences and make him and his staff available to be interviewed by the RCMP, or is he just going to refuse to face the music?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, again, we see Conservatives trying to drum up acts of political theatre on a matter that was dealt with years ago, because all they have in their toolbox is personal attacks and flinging mud. You would think, Mr. Speaker, that a Conservative party, a loyal opposition to Her Majesty, would be bringing up issues that matter to Canadians, whether it's growing the economy, whether it's issues that are around the cost of living, whether it's the housing crisis faced by so many Canadians. But, Mr. Speaker, we have answers to all those things in our budget, and we will continue working on that. That's why they fling mud.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Well, Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister thinks that it's not a matter of speaking French, it's a matter of perhaps learning to speak French at some point in the future. At some point. Well, in that case, perhaps this Prime Minister could just let Quebec apply the French language charter to federally regulated businesses? End of the story? It's that simple. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the leader of the Bloc Québécois is concerned about Quebec and protecting official languages and French in Quebec, and that's just as it should be. That's his responsibility. But as a Prime Minister, as a Canadian government, our responsibility is to ensure that our official languages are protected throughout the country, not just in Quebec. Only a federal government can do that. And that is exactly what we are doing throughout the country. The Honourable Member. Well, that's all very well, but he's not doing that. That's the problem. I'm not trying to criticize Ms. Simon or Ms. Murphy. I am actually criticizing the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, he's the one who appointed them, whereas these two ladies, as respectable as they may be, do not speak French. How can he be so shocked that people don't speak French when he's the one appointing people who aren't even close to speaking French? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, as my colleague knows very well, Madame Simon grew up in northern Quebec at a time when Indigenous people were not taught French. That is a shameful part of our history. And we are working very hard everywhere in the country to change that reality in the present and future. We are at a point in our path as a country where everyone, I believe, agrees that it was very important to have a Governor General who can speak very deeply about reconciliation, and that is what she's doing while learning French.
And Middlesex.
Mr. Speaker, I know the Prime Minister may not have the answer to this question right now, and it may take him a few minutes to find out the answer. So I'm going to ask the question now, and then we're going to ask it again later, giving him time to consult with his staff to find out. So, Mr. Speaker, my question is this. Did the Prime Minister claim the $215,000 illegal vacation as a taxable benefit on his income tax return?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
See is Conservative politicians who want to keep manufacturing distractions on matters that were dealt with years ago, instead of talking about the economy, the environment, or things that Canadians care about. They don't want to talk about our plan to support young families buy into the housing market. They don't want to talk about our plan to create more jobs and grow a green economy. They don't want to talk about more gun control. They don't want to talk about standing up for women's rights. They want to fling mud and distract from their own failings, whether it's their leadership, whether it's their convoy, or whether it's any other issue that they're avoiding.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint-Laurent. Mr. Speaker, this is not a distraction. This is a matter of facts. RCMP documents show that the Prime Minister committed a fraud offence. He received a $215,000 gift from someone who lobbies the Canadian government. Yesterday, he admitted that he never gave himself permission to receive that gift. But the Prime Minister was not questioned by the RCMP on this. So I have a simple question for the Prime Minister, who unfortunately has had the same attitude for 6 years. Why does he believe that he is above the law? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, Canadians are watching the Conservatives engage in political theatre on a matter that was dealt with years ago. They won't stop at anything to draw attention away from their support to the illegal blockades that cost our economy, that forced people into unemployment, and that meant that many people didn't feel safe in their own neighborhoods. Now let's talk about what really matters for Canadians. The cost of living, Putin's illegal war in Ukraine, and so on. These are the real issues that this government will concentrate on, at a time when, unfortunately, the Conservatives are concentrating on attacking me. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint-Laurent. Mr. Speaker, I have a reminder for the Prime Minister. Does he remember the name of Jody Wilson-Raybould? I'd like to remind him about this person, this woman who respected the law, unlike the Prime Minister, someone who was shown the door by the Prime Minister. Why? Because she cared about supporting the law and because she refused to engage in political partisanship with legal proceedings. And the way the Prime Minister acted with her is the same way that he acted with the $215,000 gift. Why does this Prime Minister once again think that he is above the law? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker. Once again, we see that the Conservatives are desperate to talk about anything except what really matters. What really matters in Canadians' daily lives. Investing in childcare. Reducing the gap between Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities. Investing in green infrastructure. Ensuring that the wealthy pay their fair share. No, the Conservatives just want to hurl political attacks, personal attacks at me instead of actually concentrating on issues that matter to Canadians.
Eastman. Well, I know, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister can't keep his litany of scandals straight and that he's always confused between all his multiple charges underneath the Conflict of Interest Act. What we're talking about here is the criminal code and a Prime Minister who thinks he's above the law. The RCMP need to reopen the investigation into the Prime Minister accepting a gift from a lobbyist worth over $215,000. The Prime Minister cannot act with impunity. He should be held to a higher standard. So will the Prime Minister commit today to cooperating with the RCMP on his fraud against the government?
Wow. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, again, these issues were dealt with years ago. The Conservative Party is desperate to try and find personal attacks to go on to muddy the waters so that people don't actually talk about the real issues facing Canadians, whether it's the housing crisis, whether it's the opioid epidemic, whether it's erosion of individuals' rights, whether it's support for the green transition. These are things that matter deeply to Canadians that unfortunately Conservatives, well, they'd rather focus on me than focusing on what deeply matters to Canadians in their daily lives.
I think if people want to ask questions, they can get on the list to ask questions. We're more than happy so that we can all speak in the House of Commons. We're all ready for the next question? Awesome. The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
Mr. Speaker, due to the slow rollout of sanctions against Russian oligarchs closely affiliated with Putin, yesterday we learned that Igor Marakov, one of those oligarchs, was able to move $120 million of assets out of Canada, due to the slow rollout of those sanctions. New Democrats have long been calling for an expansion of sanctions to apply them directly to oligarchs closely affiliated with Putin who are fueling the war in Ukraine. Why is this government dragging its feet?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Since even before the beginning of this illegal war in Ukraine, Canada has been leading the charge in support for Ukraine and indeed pushing back against Russia. But it was also extremely important that we work in a coordinated fashion with our allies and partners across NATO and around the world, and that's exactly what we did with the strongest package of sanctions ever applied against a modern major economy. We have continued to do that, including with 203 new sanctions brought in today. today that brings the total over 1,000 people supporting Putin sanctioned since just February. We will continue to do every bit more we need to.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
Evening is Yom HaShoah, a time to remember the Holocaust. It's when it commences. This weekend at the War Memorial, a memorial that's committed to remembering Canadian soldiers who gave their life to fight the Holocaust, there's going to be a protest where the chief guest speaker is a notorious anti-Semite, a Holocaust denier, and someone who's promoting the horrific war in Ukraine that Putin is engaged in. Canadians deserve to be protected from hate groups. So what is the government going to do to prevent this obscenity from happening?
Hear, hear. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, tonight is indeed the beginning of Yom HaShoah. Anti-Semitism and hatred in any form have no place in Canada. We've held a national summit on anti-Semitism to hear directly from community leaders on their concerns, and Budget 2022 provides funding to support the Special Envoy, the construction of a new Holocaust Museum, and the Sarah and Chaim Neuberger Holocaust Education Center, and proposes to prohibit the promotion of anti-Semitism through the denial and downplaying of the Holocaust. We will always be steadfast in our support for Canada's Jewish community, and I look forward to seeing many parliamentarians tomorrow at the Memorial for the Holocaust.
The Honourable Member for Northwest Territories.
Mr. Speaker, Inuit communities in the Inuvialuit settlement region and across the north all agree that self-determination is an essential step towards reconciliation. This is the best way to promote prosperity and support community and individual well-being throughout Inuit Nunangat, with the goal of socio-economic and cultural equity between Inuit and other Canadians. Mr. Speaker, can the Prime Minister inform the House about the latest developments in ensuring the government properly support Inuit self-determination? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I want to begin by thanking the member for the Northwest Territories for his question and his outstanding work. Along with our Inuit partners, it is in what is the culmination of years of collaboration, we've recently announced the endorsement of the Inuit Nunangat policy. This will help ensure that Inuit priorities and self-determination are part of the government's programs, policies, and initiatives going forward across the breadth of everything a government does. We will continue to work with Inuit leadership through the Inuit Crown Partnership Committee to build a renewed Inuit-Crown relationship and advance reconciliation based on affirmation of rights, respect, and partnership.
The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, in the ongoing saga of the Prime Minister's illegal vacation on a trip that pretty much any Canadian wouldn't be able to afford, there are dark grey areas concerning the Prime Minister's discretionary power to circumvent the law. Mr. Speaker, did the Prime Minister handcuff the RCMP to protect himself from the facts and from a new scandal? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, it's clear that the party across the way is running out of material because they're raising the same questions that were raised by the Conservative leader 3 Conservative leaders ago. The Conservatives want to continue to create distractions instead of talking about the things that are important to Canadians, like the economy and the environment. This is what's clear. They don't want to talk about the need to ensure that our economic recovery doesn't leave anyone behind. They don't want to talk about the climate crisis. They don't even want to recognize that it exists. And they don't want to talk about how we've made our communities safer by banning assault weapons. Mr. Speaker, we're going to continue to work for Canadians.
Honourable Member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Mr. Speaker, page 56 of the RCMP's criminal brief into the Prime Minister said that the Prime Minister's actions were, quote, more damaging to the Government of Canada's appearance of integrity than would similar actions carried out by a lower-ranking government official, closed quote. Canadians expect the highest standard of integrity from the Prime Minister. Why does this Prime Minister believe that he is above that standard?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, we see how short of ideas or relevance the Conservative Party of Canada is right now when they don't have anything to say about the housing crisis that we just put forward strong measures to address in our budget of 2 weeks ago. We move forward on initiatives to invest in the green transition, in the green economy, in ways that are going to make a huge difference in the lives of Canadians from coast to coast to coast, and Conservatives have nothing to say about that. They have nothing to say on the issues facing Canadians. Instead, they just want to fling mud. They just want to make personal attacks on me. I'm going to stay focused on Canadians.
The honourable member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Speaker, yesterday the Prime Minister incriminated himself by admitting to the only element that the RCMP could not establish to charge the Prime Minister with fraud. So, will this Prime Minister share that information with the RCMP? And if not, is it because he's afraid he'll be charged?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, Canadians of all backgrounds and walks of life are watching question period, and what they see right now is a Conservative Party desperate to distract. Order.
Please, let's just respect the process here to ask a question and answer, and we'll try our best to do that. The Honourable Prime Minister. Right Honourable.
Speaker, what Canadians watching question period see today is a Conservative Party flailing about, desperate to bring up issues that were dealt with years ago, desperate to try and distract from the fact that they have nothing to offer Canadians. No solutions on the housing crisis that Canadians are faced, and they can't even criticize us for the solutions we put forward 2 weeks ago in the budget. We continue to stay focused on Canadians while they stay focused on me.
I'm just going to wait a second. I'm hearing a lot back there. If the member wants to be on the list for asking questions, I'm sure he can talk to his folks and get on the list.
The honourable member for Charlebourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, let's be clear. The Prime Minister is answering these questions by saying they're personal attacks, but no. They are questions about somebody who is supposed to represent the highest moral code as Prime Minister, and yet he's not. The Prime Minister admitted before this House the only element that the RCMP wasn't able to establish to accuse him of fraud. Will the Prime Minister share this information in a proactive way with the RCMP, and if not, is it because he's afraid of being charged of fraud? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, 2 weeks ago, we tabled a historic budget which is going to help Canadians buy a new house. It's going to help fight climate change by creating a greener economy that will invest in Indigenous communities and will help make them more autonomous. And the Conservative Party has nothing to say about it. No questions, no criticisms, no counter-proposals. Instead, they are going into the weeds on an issue that was looked at years ago. We are going to continue to focus on delivering for Canadians. The Honourable Member for Repentigny. Mr. Speaker, the federal government is not ready for the green transition. That's what the Environment Commissioner said in the report yesterday. The report says that there's no federal implementation plan, no official governance structure, and no follow-up system to support a fair transition. And the report also says that the government is not ready to offer sufficient help to over 50 communities and 170,000 workers in the fossil fuel sector. Mr. Speaker, that's absolutely indispensable if we want to transition away from fossil fuel. Why has the Prime Minister done nothing for workers? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Let's be clear, Mr. Speaker. Our government's plan for a fair transition is very clear. We have a full action plan which includes legislative measures. We are working with workers, unions, Indigenous groups, stakeholders, and the provinces and territories to find the best way forward. We are making strategic investments in training and skills, in regional strategies and projects across Canada, which will allow us to create sustainable jobs. It takes concerted planning for Canadians to have sustainable jobs which will help them in the future, and that's what we are delivering. The Honourable Member for Repentigny. Well, the Environment Commissioner has found something completely different, Mr. Speaker. He's seen that the Prime Minister has done nothing to help the workers in the oil and gas sector in the green transition. But that doesn't mean that the Prime Minister hasn't done anything. No, he's done a lot of things to help the oil and gas sector. Among other things, he bought Trans Mountain. He also just approved the Baie du Nord project, which will create an additional billion barrels of oil. So the question is, if the Commissioner has indeed shown that the federal government isn't ready for the green transition, is that just because the Prime Minister has never had the intention of starting a green transition? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we thank the Commissioner for the report. His work shows all the work that's been done and the work that is left to do. After a decade of inaction under the previous Conservative government, we've made enormous progress, whether that be in building the green economy of the future, by making sure that it's no longer possible to pollute for free across Canada, or by protecting new waterways and lands. We are ready to do more to keep our lands safe, to grow jobs, and to build a stronger economy.
Bill Donan, St. Paul.
Mr. Speaker, it's important to remember that the Ambassador Bridge and Coots, Alberta crossings were cleared before the Emergency Act was invoked. The act was not needed to clear the border blockades. Police were well equipped to take care of this with all of their existing laws and powers. So what then was the national security threat that met the extraordinarily high threshold needed to invoke this act? Is there something they're not telling us, or was the Prime Minister trying to cover up for his incompetent management of the protest?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
When illegal blockades hurt workers and endangered public safety, police were clear that they needed tools not held by any federal, provincial, or territorial law. It was only after we got advice from law enforcement that we invoked the Emergencies Act. The Canadian Policing Association, Canadian and Ontario Associations of Chiefs of Police all agreed this is how the legislation should be used for emergencies. We've now announced the independent inquiry to examine the circumstances that led to the declaration and the measures taken in response. I know we all look forward to Justice Rouleau's work.
Honourable Member for Kildonan St. Paul.
Mr. Speaker, the protest organizers are being held accountable in courts as we speak, but this inquiry is to ensure the government is being held accountable.
That's right.
Invoking an act with the power to override charter rights is dangerous, so the purpose of the inquiry is to tell the public whether the threshold needed to invoke the act was in fact met. But the Liberal government has not made a convincing argument, meaning the threshold remains in serious doubt. So either they're hiding something or they're covering up for incompetence. Will the Prime Minister waive cabinet confidence and let Canadians know the true story?
Yeah, the Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, when we invoke the Emergencies Act in a restrained and limited way, we also committed to the full transparency that goes with the invocation of these hours. Whether it's a parliamentary committee that has been examining the issue, or whether it is a full public inquiry that will be transparent and have the power to understand the circumstances and the use of the Emergencies Act. That is the kind of thing that everyone should look forward to. Unfortunately, Conservatives are made uneasy by the fact that they were standing against hardworking Canadians by standing with people who are illegally blockading our economy.
The Honourable Member for Medicine Hat, Carson Warner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Unfortunately, I think the Prime Minister's definition of transparency is different than Canadians. The Emergency Act stipulates that the Special Joint Committee and the inquiry are responsible to hold the actions of the government to account, not that of Canadian citizens.
Yes.
At last night's committee meeting, the Ministers of Public Safety and Justice continue to hide behind cabinet confidences and lawyer-client privilege. Will the Prime Minister be transparent and accountable to Canadians and release the documents that the government relied upon to justify the invocation of the Emergencies Act?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, an integral part of invoking unutilized to this point acts like the Emergencies Act is a level of transparency and accountability that comes through a parliamentary committee created to look into exactly that, and a transparent public inquiry headed up by Justice Rouleau, who will be able to examine all these questions around the circumstances that led up to the invocation of that and the use of the Act in itself. That is what Canadians expect, but that's exactly what makes Conservatives uncomfortable because of their support of those convoys.
The Honourable Member for Etobicoke Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we continue to be shocked by the images coming out of Bucha, Mariupol, and other cities and villages across Ukraine where terrible crimes have been committed by Putin's forces. While Canada has supported Ukraine at every step before and since the illegal invasion by Russia, Ukrainians continue to need our support. Can the Prime Minister please share with this House and with Canadians the most recent measures that our government has taken to hold President Putin and his collaborators accountable for their actions? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, first I would like to thank my colleague from Etobicoke Centre for his solidarity with the Ukrainian people and for his personal leadership. This morning we announced new sanctions on 11 senior officials and 192 other members of the People's Councils of the so-called Luhansk and Donetsk People's Republics. These measures that we've taken today will apply further pressure on President Putin and those who are complicit in the horrific events, the horrific crimes taking place in Ukraine. We will continue to stand with Ukraine and its people.
The Honourable Member for Sturgeon River Parkland.
Mr. Speaker, the Emergencies Act is crystal clear. The independent public inquiry must look into the circumstances leading up to and the measures used by the government under the Emergencies Act. It is completely inappropriate for the Prime Minister to try and direct the scope of this inquiry by predetermining what the Commissioner must investigate. This is political interference. It is up to the Commissioner, based upon the Emergencies Act, to determine what is relevant, not the Prime Minister. Will the Prime Minister immediately amend the Order in Council to remove any political interference from this inquiry, yes or no?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
When this government invoked the Emergencies Act, we committed to Canadians that we would be upfront and transparent about it. And we've kept that commitment. And the Commission and independent public inquiry is further evidence of that as they look into the circumstances that led up to the invocation of the Emergencies Act and the use by the government of that Emergencies Act. As we've made clear, we will work directly with the Commission to make sure that they are able to fully complete that work.
The Honourable Member for Sturgeon River Parkland.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians deserve to know the full truth and nothing but the truth on how the Liberal government came to their decision that the threshold had been met to invoke the Emergencies Act. Key evidence considered by Cabinet would include a complete legal and constitutional analysis on the legality of this decision. Without this information, this inquiry will not be able to perform its legislated mandate to determine if this government acted appropriately. Will the Prime Minister commit today to being open by default and make this internal analysis available to the Commissioner immediately? Yes or no?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
That in the member's second question, he confirmed that the mandate of the Commission is to look into the circumstances that led to the invocation of the Act and the use of that Act as responsible. That is exactly what is the issue. Unfortunately, Conservative politicians seem a little bit uncomfortable that the inquiry might find that they're supporting blockaders and folks who tried to shut down the Canadian economy and overthrow the government were maybe on the wrong side of the issue. That's what Conservative politicians seem to be so worried about, Mr. Speaker.
Order. Order. We're almost done.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-l'Érable. Well, we're not done yet, Mr. Speaker. It's stronger than him. The Prime Minister has to be the centre of attention. He was investigated by the RCMP. We know that he did not give himself the right to receive a gift, but that he received it anyway. He was, therefore, the Prime Minister in office who was guilty of ethical lapses on several occasions And let's see if he also gave himself the right to break another law. His staff have had time to check. Did he declare, yes or no, his free trip to a private island as a taxable benefit on his tax report? It's an easy question, Mr. Speaker. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Once again, Mr. Speaker, we see that the Conservatives are flailing about because they don't want to talk about the issues that Canadians are concerned about in their day-to-day lives, whether that be the housing crisis, where we've proposed a very strong plan in the most recent budget to help Canadians, or whether that be when it comes to the green transition, in which we've invested billions of dollars to make sure that we have jobs for the generations to come that fight climate change. These are issues that the Conservatives don't want to talk about. They want to focus on me. We are going to continue to focus on Canadians.
The Honourable Member for West Vancouver, Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky Country.
Mr. Speaker, many Indigenous, rural and remote communities are still heavily dependent upon diesel and other fossil fuels for heat and for power. Would the Prime Minister please be able to tell this House what the government is doing to ensure that these communities and communities in rural and remote Canada are able to transition towards net zero?
Great question.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the member for West Vancouver, Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky Country for his important question and his hard work on protecting the environment. Advancing the transition to Indigenous climate leadership is central to addressing climate change. It includes continuing to support Indigenous, rural, and remote communities by investing in Indigenous-led and delivered solutions to climate change and the transition to clean energy. It's why our strengthened climate plan invests $300 million to advance our commitment to ensure communities relying on diesel have access to clean, renewable, and reliable energy by 2030.
Honourable Member for Winnipeg Centre.
Mr. Speaker, Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people are not safe as a result of successive Liberal and Conservative governments putting the privileges of big oil corporations over our safety and human rights. We saw this in the budget, which gives $2.6 billion to big oil, but zero new funding to implement all the calls for justice from the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. This is disgraceful. Will the government commit to increased investment to end this crisis of violence?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, our hearts are with survivors and families of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, Two-Spirit, and 2S LGBTQIA+ people. Addressing this ongoing violence requires living up to the goals of our country and all the calls for justice. In June 2021, partners from across the country came together and released the National Action Plan, including the federal pathway to finally end this ongoing tragedy. It will be supported by Budget 2021's $2.2 billion investment in concrete measures that will keep people safe.
The Honourable Member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
On April 4th, the IPCC issued its latest and most stern climate warning. Globally, within 3 years, emissions must peak and drop dramatically in half by 2030. The only hope of holding to less than 2 degrees Celsius is by 2025, global emissions peak and then drop in half by 2030. 2 days later, this government approved Bay du Nord. 3 days later, the budget said we're going to complete the Trans Mountain Pipeline. In the face of this, my question is why? With a choice of now or never, why has Canada chosen never?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians know what's at stake in the fight against climate change. It's why we are stepping up our climate ambition by committing more than $100 billion to climate action, ensuring we reduce methane emissions by 75% by 2030 and transitioning to a net zero emitting electricity grid by 2035. We're also doubling our commitment to $5.3 billion to help developing countries fight climate change and protect biodiversity. We will continue delivering ambitious and achievable climate action that protects our communities and builds a healthy future for everyone.
And that's all the time we have for question period today. I think we have a number of appel au règlement, some points of order. The honourable member for Edmonton Strathcona.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I think if you seek it, you will find unanimous consent for the following motion. That, given that there is clear and ample evidence of systematic and massive war crimes and crimes against humanity being committed against the people of Ukraine by the armed forces of the Russian Federation, directed by President Vladimir Putin and others within the Russian parliament, and B, the crimes committed by the armed forces of the Russian Federation include mass atrocities in the invaded and occupied Ukrainian territories, systematic instances of willful killing of Ukrainian civilians and the desecration of corpses, forcible transfer of Ukrainian children to the Russian territory, torture and the imposition of life conditions causing grave suffering, widespread instances of physical harm, mental harm, and rape. The House recognize that the Russian Federation is committing acts of genocide against the Ukrainian people.
All those opposed to the honourable member moving the motion will please say nay. Agreed. The House heard the terms of the motion. All those opposed to the motion will please say nay. Motion is carried. Deuxième appel au règlement.
The honourable member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagot. Mr. Speaker, there was consultation between parties, and I think you'll find that there is unanimous consent with regard to the following motion, that this House call upon the government to develop a due diligence policy on corporate responsibility with respect to human rights and the environment that require companies to prevent adverse human rights impacts and environmental damage throughout their global operations and supply chains, require companies to do their due diligence, including by carefully assessing how they may be contributing to human rights abuse or environmental damage abroad, and by providing access to remedy when harms occur, result in meaningful consequences for companies that fail to carry out and report on adequate due diligence, establish a legal right for people who have been harmed to seek justice in Canadian courts, and strengthen the office of the Canadian Ombudsman for Responsible Enterprises, including giving them the power to compel witnesses and testimonies.
Que tous ceux qui s'opposent à ce que l'honorable député propose la motion.
Will please say nay. There is no unanimous consent.
And then finally, the honourable member for Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman with a point of order.
Mr. Speaker, today during question period, the Prime Minister danced around answering any questions about criminal charges that he could be being investigated on. So, Mr. Speaker, I believe it's only fair that I share with all members of this House the criminal briefing documents from the RCMP on the Prime Minister's fraud against the government.
All those opposed to the honourable member moving the motion will please say nay. And we don't have leave to do it. Okay. Any other points of order today? Oh, the honourable member for Mission Maskey, Fraser Canyon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday I saw the member from Sydney actually wearing this wonderful tie with his name on it, a picture of his riding in the colors of the Liberal Party. Just to confirm, is it okay for me, Mr. Speaker, to wear a blue and white tie with my name on it and of my riding as well? Can you please clarify that for the House, Mr. Speaker?
That one there, we'll come back to the member later on to check to see what the ruling is on that one. So thank you for that. All right. Daily routine of business. So we're going to go to tabling of documents. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Leader of the Government in the House.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 36.8a, I have the honour to table in both official languages the government's response to one petition. This return will be tabled in an electronic format. And while I'm on my feet, Mr. Speaker, I would move, seconded by the member from Brampton North, that the House do now proceed to orders of the day.
Yeah.
Mr. Lamoureux, seconded by Ms. Sahota, moves that the House do now proceed to orders of the day. If a member of a recognized party present in the House wishes to request a recorded division or the motion be adopted on division, I will invite them to rise and indicate it to